Aoife will be out next week, and a lot of players are rightfully disappointed with the type of kit that he was given. However, he is looking to be very good in his role, and I believe most people are heavily underestimating what he is capable of. So in today's video, we'll go over Aoife's kit, teams, builds, and give an overall analysis on him at the end. You'll keep in mind that this is pre-release, so it's possible something will change or something new will be discovered once he's released. With that out of the way, let's get started. So, you're probably familiar with the gist of Aoife's kit, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, I'll briefly summarize. Aoife is a 4-star Anemo Catalyst user. His gameplay primarily focuses on using his skill to fly, similar to Wanderer and Chaska. During his skill, you'll want to hold down the normal attack button to make him automatically shoot enemies with his gun, dealing AoE Anemo damage and healing the whole team based off his EM, although the healing is pretty low. But additionally, while Aoife is in his skill, his Ascension 4 passive will buff the reaction damage bonus for both Swirl and Electrocharged for the entire party. The size of the buff is based off the total amount of Night Soul points your team has, but it's a pretty strong buff that will allow you to see up to 15,000 Electrocharged procs even on characters who don't build EM. And then his burst is basically just grouping, but the grouping doesn't seem to be that good, so his burst isn't super important. With Aoife's kit explained, let's now look into his teams. Since he's focused on Swirl and Electrocharged, you'll want both a Hydro and Electro unit, and you also want a unit from Natlan for his passive. Using Auroron or Iansan will cover both the Electro and Natlan team slots at the same time, so using one of them is highly recommended. Then a second Electro in the last slot is a good idea, as you'll have much more Electro application, thus more Swirl and Electrocharge damage, on top of the value the second Electro provides with their own kit. Fischl is highly recommended for this second Electro, since Aoife gets a lot of swirls and a good amount of normal attacks, making him a great driver for Fischl. If using a Yansan, Fischl will also be able to snapshot her buffs. And since Aoife heals, it's natural to default to Farina as the Hydro, so we can do a team of Aoife, Farina, Yansan/Auroron, and Fischl. If you do use Farina, I highly recommend using Aoife on Prototype Amber and a healing bonus circlet to maximize his healing, especially if he isn't C6 yet. But despite needing Prototype here, this is surprisingly strong, calculating over 80,000 DPS. It's higher with Iansan, but that's mainly because I have Fischl on a 5-star weapon and Auroron on a 4-star. If they were both on the same rarity of weapon, it would be the same DPS with Iansan as Auroron. And keep in mind that using a Yansan is trading out Auroron's AoE damage to increase Fischl's single target damage, so Auroron should always be better in AoE. Yansan also has less than half the max Night Soul points as Auroron, so you'll get less reaction damage bonus with her and lower AoE damage from your Swirls and Electrocharged, but it's a pretty small difference. Yelan can also be used as the Hydro instead of Farina. Since healing isn't nearly as important without Farina, you should be able to use Hakushin Ring for buffing instead of Prototype, which is surprisingly enough for Yelan to be higher DPS than Farina here, so I'd actually recommend using Yelan unless you have a Constellated Farina, then you'll want to use her. Another option is to go double Hydro and use both Farina and Yelan, but double Electro just seems to be better, because Fischl deals very high damage here, and you get much more Electrocharge procs with her since you have way more Electro application. Double Hydro should outscale double Electro with enough investment into both Farina and Yelan's Constellations, but for the majority of players, double Electro is simply better. One last way Aoife can be used is just using him as a scroll bot with Thrilling Tales, in order to buff an on-fielder. The only reason to use him over other scroll holders would be for using an Anemo DPS like Wanderer and Zhao, since no other character can do this for them. Unfortunately, Aoife provides no buffing from his own kit to them, and will have to take longer than desired field time since you'd have to cast his skill to fly, then you do normal attack for particles, then plunge to land before you can swap. So for Wanderer, this is looking to just be a side grade to his current best options like Farina and Yunjin, but it only requires a C0 Aoife, and he doesn't need to be built well for it at all. If Aoife actually had buffing in his kit for Wanderer to use in addition to Scroll and Thrilling Tales, this could have been a massive buff for him, but sadly it just wasn't meant to be. And as for Zhao, this won't fit into his teams at all. Aoife won't be healing off-field, so you won't be able to use Farina. And if you try to use both Aoife and Xianyun, there won't be any element for Aoife to swallow, and thus you won't get Scroll, defeating the entire point. And that covers Aoife's teams, so let's now go over how to build him. For For Aoife's artifacts, you should always be using 4-piece VV without question. You might think to use 4-piece Scroll since he's from Natlan, but you'll already have that covered from Auroron or Aeon Sun, so there's no point. And for his main stats on his artifacts, use EM on the Sands and Goblet, and either Healing Bonus or EM on the Circlet. You'll get a lot more healing from a Healing Circlet and only lose out on about 800 or so damage from each swirl, so definitely go with Healing Bonus if using Farina. But if you aren't using Farina and don't feel you need the extra healing, use Elemental Mastery. And for Aoife's own personal damage, it's actually more damage to go for an attack damage crit build, focusing on his talent damage rather than swirl, but it's not much more damage, and you lose out on a lot of healing, so I'd really recommend just doing the EM build. For the main stats, prioritize Elemental Mastery. You can also focus on Crit Substance since there's not really anything else to be focusing on, but you won't miss out on much if you don't get many crit rolls. Energy Recharge is not needed, as Aoife gets plenty of energy refund from his C1 as well as Auroron if using him, and you also get energy from Hakushin Ring or Prototype Amber no matter what you are using. Plus there's also Electro Resonance, which gives you a lot of energy as well. And speaking of his weapons, there's really only 3 worth using: Prototype Amber, Hakushan Ring, and Mizuki's weapon, Sunny Morning Sleepin'. Mizuki's weapon provides a massive amount of elemental mastery. With it, Aoife can be doing over 10,000 damage per swirl, even on a healing bonus circlet. And with a healing circlet and this weapon, he can heal for like 1000 HP per normal attack, so that should be sufficient healing for Farina, especially if your Farina is C2, since you'll have a ton of healing bonus from her. But if you're using Farina and don't have this weapon, then I'd highly advise using Prototype Amber, especially if your Aoife is not C6. The extra healing from Prototype's passive combined with Aoife's own healing will be plenty enough to offset Farina's HP drain and build good fanfare. If you aren't using Farina and are comfortable with Aoife's own healing for sustain, then use Hakushan Ring for the extra buffing. Finally, let's go over the importance of Aoife's constellations. C1 and C5 aren't important. C4 is okay, it gives you 3 more seconds of uptime on his grouping, which can be nice, but his grouping isn't that good to begin with, so it's not going to make a huge difference. C3 is pretty good, it gives you extra healing since it gives you 3 more talent levels on his skill, which is what the healing scales off of. C2 is fantastic, it basically makes it so that you're always going to be getting 300 reaction damage bonus from his A1 passive, as long as you have another Night Soul bar active. And then C6, this is his best constellation. Gives you a coordinated attack 50% of the time, basically meaning you're healing by 50% more and you're getting some extra swirls. Now while this C6 is very good for him, if we look at the math, his team is still proper strong even if he's just C2, so I don't recommend spending a bunch of Primo Gems trying to get him to C6, but instead aim for C2, maybe C3 for now, then possibly go for C6 next time he's available. Alright, that's all we need to know, so what's the verdict on Aoife? Overall, I definitely understand why so many people are disappointed with his kit. I am too. There was a lot of potential for him to be a great support had he been some type of R-filled buffer or sub-DPS type of character, being as he would be the only Anemo Scroll user, so he would have a very unique niche. But instead, he fills a role that characters that we just got like Mizuki and Lanyan can already do, plus Supers who's been in the game since 1.0 can do as well. However, he is at the very least looking to be far superior to every other Anemo driver option in this role. Even at C2, his team DPS is legitimately pretty good, vastly superior to every other Taser driver option. And not only is the DPS superior, but he also just way smoother to play, since he has massive range and flies, so he can move around and kite enemies while attacking. He even has interruption resistance on his skill, although we haven't seen how good it is. Furthermore, Aoife looks like he should be the complete package for an overworld character. He has massive range and AoE to effectively deal with camps of enemies, he has team-wide healing so you won't need that from anyone else, he has some grouping, and he has flight for traversal. So at the absolute worst case scenario, you should be able to have a lot of fun with him in the overworld, which is where we spend most of our time. So yeah, while Aoife is definitely not what most of us wanted, myself included, he is very good for what he is, and you can absolutely get good use out of him if you want to. If you liked today's video, please be sure to like and subscribe and comment your thoughts below. Also feel free to join my Discord, link in the description. Thanks and goodbye.